is King Khash, and you're listening to Pro Wrestling Post Podcast.
What's up, guys? You're listening to the Pro Wrestling Post Podcast with your host, Mark Madison. This episode's guest is King Khash. Visit ProWrestlingPost.com for interviews, blogs, and upcoming events in your area. You can also find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Anchor, or whatever podcast app you prefer. And now, here's Mark Madison.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mark Madison, and I'm joined this week on the Pro Wrestling Post podcast with Mr. King Khash, who will be competing as part of Defy Wrestling's Aries Swerve 2 event this coming Friday, July the 20th. Thanks again, King, for your time and your energy.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm very excited to be part of the show this Friday. It's going to be an awesome event.
Fantastic. Share your early interest and pursuit in wrestling. How did it initially come about, and how did that transition from being a fan to actually being the guy that walks through the curtain as opposed to the person standing and sitting maybe in the crowd watching it develop come about?
Yeah, I moved from Iran to America when I was actually like 10 years old. And I was just, flipping through the channel and had no idea what pro wrestling was. And I just turned into WWE, and I the first thing I saw was like someone getting power bombed into a table, and I was like, whoa, this is like the coolest thing ever. And I was a fan until I was 18 years old, and as soon as I turned 18, I knew you could do this. And I turned to a pro wrestling school locally, and I started training.
When you were that fan growing up, who was it that maybe inspired and said, they took those crazy bumps through tables, but who was it that maybe you gravitated towards that was maybe an influence?
My favorite was Triple H. Triple H was the guy I always wanted to be like. His style of wrestling and, his charisma and his presence, I always loved. And I always wanted to be just like him.
Yeah. And he's so evolved, though, throughout his career, right? He just didn't stick to one character. Changed his look.
He was like, man, he came out at first, he was, Attitude Era. I never got to watch that time. Right now I'm like 22 years old. I never got to watch the Attitude Era, and when you talk to most wrestling fans, they say Attitude Era was the best time. Mm-hmm. But when I started watching, he was doing the comedy stuff with Shawn Michaels and stuff like that, and to me that was awesome. It made me laugh and entertain me.
How can you see the King Khash character being from where maybe you get started to where you maybe foresee it going? Like, do you see it having an edge? Do you seeing it being more comedic? Do you see it being kind of a bit of both or transitioning? What do you see?
Well, King Khash, like I said, I'm from Iran, and that's my whole character. Is I'm a Persian kid that, is cocky. Mm-hmm. But again, at the end, I don't want to do the whole foreign, bad guy King Khash because he's from another country. I want it to be different. I want it to be maybe a baby face or a good guy, as we say, in pro wrestling, and that's never been done. And right now, WWE's doing that with a couple of their guys. Having a foreign guy that's different than just say, because I'm from another country, I am a bad guy. Mm-hmm. I just want to do a little bit of not necessarily comedy at all, but because my style of wrestling is very serious. But I want to just do something different that you can even get the fans behind you, even if you're from another country.
Yeah. You mentioned those other characters, like an Arya Daivari plays the stereotypical, and it's not really fair, right? But then you have someone great like Mustafa Ali, who's just really inspirational, and maybe you can carry on in that same vein, right? That same story of being...
Yes, the same thing of, him just coming out and saying, hey, just because you're from another country doesn't make you a bad guy. And he's a tremendous wrestler, and the crowd is behind him, and that's awesome. I'm so happy for him, and that was very cool.
I was fortunate enough to come across something that was quite inspiring, written about yourself and the influence of Buddy Wayne. Maybe you could share with fans what he meant to you and what he's left you with, and how that all came about.
Yeah, so when I looked up locally the schools, I couldn't find anybody that could train me because in Seattle, like wrestling was very dead, like about 4 years ago. So I went to WrestleMania and I met Daniel Bryan, and he said go train with Buddy Wayne. And I was 18. I didn't know who Buddy Wayne was because he was like he was a old school wrestler and around territory days. And I started training with him, and he was more than a teacher. He was more than like, hey, come to class, let me teach you this and go home. He taught me everything, every aspect of wrestling, everything about the business side of it, everything of how to conduct yourself, and, something a lot of schools don't do. A lot of wrestling schools take your money for 12 weeks. Here's the stuff you need to learn. Here's how to protect yourself. Go ahead and do it, and then you don't talk to the teacher again. He treated me like his own son. I went to family vacations with him. I spent, a lot of time. I came in before and after wrestling classes just to learn more stuff, and he knew I was hungry, and he took the time to tell me stuff that, I do to this day, and it helps me in wrestling. And it's very old school, and a lot of people don't know. But he was more than a teacher to me, and I was very, very thankful to spend almost 4 years with him.
Wow. It's interesting that you say that about wrestling schools, but was it just Buddy that you could say that he gave you that all-in-one kind of training, or has there been other people along the way?
I mean, Buddy introduced me to his friend Rick Rogers, and I talk to Rick this day, and he still gives me pointers and advice, and also Tim Flowers. Tim Flowers is another friend of the sea, who to this day, man, he calls me like once a week or twice a week. Ask how I'm doing, if I need anything, and he's helping me get on some shows, and he's helping me introduce me to people that are on other bigger promotions and companies, and I can make connections. But through Buddy, I got to know a lot of people, guys like Brian Alvarez. But yeah, just a lot of people that Matt Farmer, all these guys that book these shows and have connections and can help me to this day, which is I'm so grateful for.
Unfortunately, Buddy's no longer with us, but what do you say to his memory and what you're able to still carry forward with that connection?
Buddy was a guy that would tell you straight up to your face that if you're not good, if you're bad, and he doesn't take no from nobody. He didn't give a fuck what anybody said, and that's what I liked about him. He would tell you the truth, and he would always tell me no matter what, if you work hard in this, it will pay off. And he said a lot of guys, for example, don't have a body in indie wrestling.
Right.
And, he would work on that. He was get it tan, be tan when you go to a show. So I always try to be tan. He would tell you some pointers. He's be different. Get those chic boots. No one wears those anymore. But yeah, so he would try to stand out from being a normal indie wrestler, and that's what I always loved because every indie wrestler looks the same.
Yeah. And that was my kind of piggybacking off the question, because you had said, Buddy will tell you straight out. Do you think that guys are a little more sensitive to being told straight out? I mean, it doesn't sound like you are.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm sure you've seen things, right?
Yeah, man, when you look at the wrestling back in the day, these guys were real men. You know what I mean? These guys looked like fucking killers. These guys were just straight up thick, tall. If you say anything, they'll straight up kill you. Now it's just a bunch of geeks running around the locker room, playing Nintendo Switch. You know what I mean? These guys. No, and this is serious, and nobody wants to these guys all weigh $120. You know what I mean? When their girlfriends weigh more than them, and they think they're a wrestler. That's not what wrestlers look to me. Again, I fell in love with guys like Triple H. these guys were real men, huge guys that are larger than life. Like that's what makes you like believe in the wrestling. I mean, sure, there are a couple high flyers, but like, you know, in the locker room, everyone is a child. You know, no one wants to go out and, you know, make connections. I was actually hanging out with MVP the other day, and he told me business is done at the bar, right? So every wrestler goes to the bar, and that's where everything is done, talking. But now everyone wants to go back to their hotel and, you know, play video games. Like, no one does that anymore. You know, everyone's so sensitive, and everyone's just like, it's another, you know, world. I get it, but I wish I was like born, you know, 20, 30 years earlier.
Yeah. Well, you've got an appreciation for that, I think, and that kind of gets into. I mean, you talked about Rip Rogers. Rip sounds like another guy that doesn't pull any punches. He tells you exactly what he's thinking, and if he doesn't like something, he's going to say it. So.
Yeah, and I'd rather, you know, I'm spending my time. I love this. I love this so much, and I spend so much time doing this. I'd rather someone tells me like what I need to fix, you know, because I'm paying them, or just tell me if I suck. Because I don't want to suck, you know what I mean? If I'm bad at something, it's like, tell me straight up so I can fix it. You know, I'd rather take that critique, and from the right people, you know, not from the wrong people. Because everyone, like, fucking tries to give you advice, but they've done nothing, you know, but gives you right advice, and they've done something in their career. And I want to take that and, you know, fix it.
Mm-hmm. You alluded, well, you really briefly mentioned it. You met another Washington native. It's kind of no secret with who he is and how popular he is, and Daniel Bryan. He said to go meet Buddy Wayne, but was there anything else in that conversation from your discussion with Daniel that you felt comfortable sharing about what he left you with, any advice? I mean, it's such a snapshot of a guy that's, I've heard of him as a trainer, and discipline is so key, even in his training sessions and how he works with others, that he left you with?
Nothing much, because it was a brief moment we talked, and I just told him I'm from Seattle, and my goal is to become a wrestler, and there's, you know, where should I train? He said when he started, there was nobody, so he actually moved down to Texas. Mm-hmm. He's like, but right now there's Buddy Wayne, which, you know, he's old school, and he knows what he's doing, so I can train with him, you know, and that's it. That was the conversation. There was nothing much to it. No. But also, like, Mr. William Regal on Twitter, he goes like, Buddy's a great trainer. I mean, he's endorsed by everybody, you know, and I mean, I don't want to go to school that's just a bunch of backyarders, you know, just training each other. You know, I want to always learn by someone local that has a reputation. That's what my goal was.
Yeah, no doubt. And how was the transition in life from, I mean, you said you moved over when you were 10, but you've moved from the age of 10 to now. I mean, it's been how many years, would you say?
I moved from Iran to America in like 2005, so 13 years actually.
Okay, 13 years. How'd you find that transition from your time developing as a wrestler?
So first I had to learn the language, right?
Right,
so
right.
That was hard for me when I got here as a kid. But my whole life was wrestling. Like, when I was in school, like, it was all wrestling. Like, I didn't like school at all. I just wanted to come home and watch wrestling. And I didn't know the language, so this was the best part of it. I don't have to listen to these guys. These guys are just telling stories with the way they're wrestling. And that's how I got it. That's the only thing I fell in love with. I would not get into anything else. I couldn't. And most of my friends grew out of it. You know, the friends that were like 10, 11, 12 years old at that time. By the time we all hit 15, 16, they're all out of it. They're all like, shit's fake. And I'm like, no, but this is still cool to me. You know, this is still like, it's still my childhood, you know. And if I even stop wrestling, like, wrestling is my childhood. That's what I fell in love with. And that's what I remember me being as a kid, was a wrestling fan.
It's interesting you said that, because, you know, learning the language is popular. I think I read somewhere where Kevin Owens learned how to speak from, you know, native French from being from Quebec, learning English after watching like WrestleMania 10, I believe, or 11. And that funny enough, listening to commentary is kind of what helped him learn the language.
Yeah, that's it is, because you just keep hearing this stuff. You're like, what is this? What is this? And like they're talking about something. You're like, oh, okay, I got it.
So
rules, like I don't know, like what Extreme Rules is. Like I don't know what it is.
Well, it'd be funny if you go up to your teacher and you call her a slobber knocker or something. Like you don't expect that coming. Could you have? Okay, so I mean, it's hard because it's 13 years. You were just a kid at 10, but if life hadn't been what it is and you hadn't had the time to develop into the wrestler you're becoming, if life had been just in Iran, do you think the opportunities kind of would still been led to you in becoming a wrestler, even if you'd stayed?
In Iran, no. But I think there's no way in Iran, because there's no pro wrestling in Iran at all.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think everything happens for a reason. I think there was a reason that for me to come here and fall in love with pro wrestling. And at 19 years old, I wrestled for WWE. And that's like unheard of. How many 19-year-olds like get a dark match on WWE product? Not a lie. And I believe everything happens for a reason. And if I was in Iran, there could have been no dream of me being a pro wrestler. And I fell in love with wrestling very quick. I think I came here, and like 2 weeks after I came to the U.S., I was like watching wrestling.
What are your thoughts about how the Greatest Royal Rumble had happened, and it was about reaching out to a different demographic and touching base with a different culture? Do you think that that means that we're moving forward and there's greater chances of wrestlers or fans developing that are straight up coming from Iran rather than just having to come to the U.S. to develop? That Greatest Royal Rumble was so cool to me, because it's so nice for like WWE to go outside of here. I can see their thing of moving international and growing another fan base, and that's very smart. And I would I would love to see a performance center like in Middle East, for all other like Middle Eastern people. And all those people are not wrestlers that come to try out. They're athletes. They're like just soccer players, wrestlers, like amateur wrestlers. They're not professional wrestlers, because there's not much professional wrestling in Middle East at all. Right.
That's been taught by someone that knows what they're doing. So I would love to see like an NXT or a performance center down in Middle East. Maybe they're just going to do, Middle East and a Europe and like a South America and a North America, like, right, we have right now. But I don't know. I hope to see, more opportunities open up, and we have a lot of time, and so do I. So we'll just sit there and I'm going to see what I'm going to sign, hopefully soon.
What's up, guys? This is Superstar Jake Atlas, a member of the PCW Ultra roster. You guys are listening to Pro Wrestling Post podcast. Make sure you guys tune in and check it out.
I know it doesn't necessarily pertain to Iran, but I remember Impact doing the Ring Cut King a few years back. Were you aware of that, or was there any interest in even trying out for something or pertaining or going to that?
No, I don't know how it has been long ago. I've heard of it because I know my friends, Bollywood Boys.
Yep.
Right now, the Singh brothers. They did it, but I didn't know until they told me, like right after it. I don't know how many years ago that was, but I mean, any company that I can wrestle for, I would love to. I just want to get an experience right now, just working around and getting my name out there. Any company, Impact, Lucha Underground, New Japan, Noah, all these companies, I would love to wrestle for. And I'm just trying to get the experience before like WWE signs a lot of guys at 26, 27, 28.
Yeah.
So I have 5, 6, 7 years.
Since your early training to maybe now, I mean, it hasn't been a long time, but let's just kind of go with this a little bit, because it isn't yesterday. It has been a little bit of time. What can you say maybe is the most important thing you've learned during your initial training to actually being in the ring and where you are now and where you've seen that? You've heard and had such great support and great advice, but there's that other piece about actually performing. What's the biggest change that you've noticed personally as professionally as you
mean, the first thing that I was taught was wrestling, right? So, Buddy didn't care about character, or if you have a nice ring jacket, or he didn't give a fuck about any of that. He's like, the first thing is if you can work, and that's what anybody looks at. If you go to a WWE like as an extra talent, they don't care. Like if you can, if you have a cool jacket, or if you're like doing some backflip, if you can work, you're on. Like they will like that, and that's what Buddy taught me. On. So as years went by, my character, I'm trying to develop that, and to my charisma, like working for Defy, especially with that hot crowd. Man, it's awesome because I can now like work with the crowd. I can now. I have the crap out of my hands. You know what I mean? Now I'm learning more like character stuff and polishing my character off. But first is wrestling, and that's what and that's why Buddy's so great because he doesn't. When the bell rings, if you can't wrestle, then you shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm. Good enough point.
Like character stuff right now, and you're getting the King Khash polish. That's what I'm working on right now, and that's I've been learning throughout the years.
Getting that polish, getting that refinement. Now you mentioned you worked with the WWE doing some live events when you were 19, but you've also competed in Mexico.
Yes, I've also wrestled in Mexico for a Super Crazy's promotion. He invited me down there for like a week, and we wrestled twice. It was awesome. It was very cool. I would definitely want to go back, and I had a great time because you don't really do it like much because Mexico's so cheap. You can go down with a little bit of money, but you can just wake up and just like go work out, go eat, go train, go work out, go eat, go train. You can do that. You don't need to have like a normal like working life like you do in the U.S.
What have you found to maybe be the biggest difference? Say, not necessarily just with Mexico, but with the WWE, that the difference of competing in front of a live crowd as opposed to something. Was there any television that was an option, or was it just working through live crowds and live events, or was there a television opportunity in having it?
Are you talking about WWE?
Yeah, or either one, or what? Because you said you competed for Super Crazy's promotion. I just don't know. Was that televised as well, or can you talk of the difference between the two?
It was like a normal indie show. So it was just a normal indie show. It was small, but like when we did WWE, I mean, it wasn't televised. But what we did, and there's still a hard cam that they told us to work towards, and it's still a lot. Like it was a dark match, so it was an audience type of crowd. Mm-hmm. But what I really like about WWE is that there's when you do that type of stuff, like a dark match, is less character work. Again, they just want to see you wrestle, which I like. I mean, I'm not too much into character stuff, but I just want like this initial of like, here's a bad guy, here's a good guy. All right, let him wrestle. But I'm not a fan of like, we'll talk for an hour to the crowd in the middle of your match because essentially we're pretending a fight. And like in a fight, you wouldn't stop and start talking to a crowd, right?
Right.
You're wrestling. So I don't like that much of the stuff that, in indie wrestling happens. In WWE, there's actually, like, they're always wrestling, which I really like. But, I'm not a fan of, like, a lot of indie stuff. And that's why I love Defy. Defy is great because, like, it's not like in normal indie wrestling. It's straight up wrestling, and then there's your serious wrestling, there's your comedy wrestling, there's your hardcore wrestling. It's just all types of styles which, gravitate towards every kind of crowd. And, it's great.
How would you best describe your style? Maybe has it always kind of been the same thing, or have you picked up little things along the way, or?
I've always been, like, more of I love holds and, mat wrestling a lot. I'm not a guy that would, like, flip for you or, like, backflip. I can't backflip, save my life. But I've always been more of a mat style wrestler. I like do a little bit of lucha as well in my stuff because I love lucha. But yeah, whatever seems, again, you're wrestling for the promotion and you're wrestling for the crowd. So whatever the crowd likes and the promotion likes.
Yeah. Oh, so you have to feel the crowd. It's not necessarily it's a one type fits all. You change according to.
No, because if you do that, then you're just a robot, right? Like you don't. I just see who I'm wrestling. If I'm wrestling in front of a bunch of kids, I'm obviously not gonna go out and do a bunch of like big moves. You know what I mean? But like, I mean that then you can tone it down a bit and still play to the crowd.
Right. Some indie crowds, I remember talking to some talent, and they come off from being with a big promotion, and then all of a sudden they're back in the indies, and they do what they did on television, and fans are sitting on their hands, and they're like, wow, so I've got to do a this into that times this back into that. Do you think that tends to be a little bit of an overkill, or do you think no? I mean, that's what the crowd wants. That's what you give them.
If you ask a different wrestler, they're gonna all give you a different answer.
Right.
There's no right or wrong. But I necessarily don't like. Again, we're indie wrestlers. I don't want to like kill myself. You know what I mean? For like, having the crowd. And if you can do it right, you can do something way easier, way nicer with like a nice timing, and the crowd will still enjoy that. But there's also promotions like PWG where these guys do like the coolest stuff ever, like, and times 10, and the crowd is like, again, giving them a standing ovation. But again, like the PWG crowd is just a bunch of wrestling fans that are not kids. It's like I think 21 plus show or 18 plus show. But I mean, if you go to an all child event, you can't do that. You gotta bring it down, and because the child won't understand what are you doing in there,
Yeah, and you cater to that crowd. I totally get that.
You cater, yeah.
Now, I originally heard that you've had a tryout camp with New Japan Pro Wrestling. How'd that all come about? Yeah, how'd that all come about, and would you walk away from it?
I mean, I've heard from a couple of people that Japan was starting a camp in Los Angeles. I just didn't know when, and then one of my buddies sent me a text, like, hey, they're doing this now. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I applied for it. I got accepted. I went down. I went to the first one that they, held. It was great. Shibata was the head trainer, along with Kushida, who came on the last day. It was a 5-day camp. It was brutal. 300-plus squats, Hindu push-ups, circuit training, neck bridges, front bridges, jumping squats, and then you get into your ring stuff after that. It was brutal 5 days, man. I was very sore. I walked away with a bunch of training styles and new stuff so you guys can try. I was invited back to go. Hopefully in a couple months, I'll go do another camp, and it's awesome. It's awesome. I think every wrestler should do that. And this goes back to us talking about wrestling and guys that are not in shape. I think every wrestler should do this, because then this will straight up tell you what wrestling is, and what condition you have to be. Because this isn't easy. This was very hard, even for guys that were in shape. This was, it kicked their ass. But this was great. In Japan, it's all about discipline and hard work and respect, and that's what wrestling is. So I think every wrestler should try and do it,
So could we see you in an NJPW ring anytime soon?
You could, yes, very possible. Very soon, hopefully. But it's very possible. I got a lot of time with, if I'm trying to get to WWE. They might call me tomorrow. They might call me in 10 years. They might never call me. But other than that, I'm going to try, and head out somewhere, hopefully to New Japan. But if not, maybe Mexico, maybe England. Those are going to be the two options, because making a name in the U.S. is getting hard now, because there's a lot of wrestlers, and for you to stand out, you're going to go somewhere different. So hopefully soon.
Oh, good. On July 20th, we mentioned this just at the top of the show, you'll be stepping in the ring with Defy Wrestling during the Aries Swerve 2 matchup. What can fans expect to see from King Khash and his opponent?
Well, if you've never been to a wrestling show, check this out, because I had a couple friends that never saw wrestling in their life that went to the last Defy show, and they're like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. It's not only wrestling, it's entertainment. And you can come, and the crowd is so live at Defy. Defy is my favorite indie promotion. I mean, I'm not a fan of indie wrestling, but Defy, I love it. And, if you should come to the show and just witness the show in person, and you can feel everything, and you can walk away just being entertained. That's what we do. This Friday, I'm going to be in there, and I'm King Khash. It doesn't matter who you put in the ring with me. I'm going to put him in the finish, which I call the Khash Clutch. It's a modified camel clutch with a full Nelson. But I'm going to beat whoever's going to be in the ring with me. It's going to be a great night, and I'm looking forward to it. And everyone should definitely come out. We got a bunch of good matches on the card, and I don't know who my opponent is yet, but whoever it is going to lose, so it doesn't matter.
Put them in their place. Before we let you go. Before we let you go, was there anything fans can expect to see from King Khash, as we're here in July of 2018, for the balance of the year and beyond?
Yeah, so I will be around the Pacific Northwest for a little while. I will be going to East Coast a little bit. King Khash will definitely make it somewhere one day. I'm not saying that because I'm just trying to promote myself. That's the reality of how so many tryout camps and so many places, I've gone, and I've been told I have a bright future ahead of me. I'm very young right now, but hopefully soon you will see me. Hopefully, my dream is WWE, and maybe one day you'll see me on WWE. Maybe one day see me on New Japan. Maybe one day see me in Mexico and AAA. So you don't know, but I had a great 4-year run. Again, I've done so much in 4 years, and I'm so thankful for, so grateful for. And I have another 8 years in this business before, I can think about quitting. So definitely come to the show. Definitely watch me before I head out somewhere, hopefully somewhere big.
Super. Before we let you go, King, I did have one more question for you. Were you up for a little game?
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so here on the Pro Wrestling Post podcast, we have something that we call Wrestling Tinder. Tinder, okay. Okay, so much like regular Tinder, if you're interested in the topic, you swipe right. And if it's that homely looking topic that you're not really interested, you swipe left.
Got it.
Okay. I think this question kind of, so I'll pitch the question. If you're interested, you swipe right, and then you proceed to answer it. If you're not, I got to rack my brains for something else. Although I think this question kind of gravitated from our conversation. So the question is, where do you see the future of wrestling as somebody that has such an appreciation of its past?
Swipe right.
Go for it.
So, business is becoming hotter. Indie wrestling especially becoming hotter. And WWE is even becoming more global. So wrestling is great. You're heading to a great place. But maybe when I hear about guys talking about 50 years or 60 years ago or 30 years ago, wrestling was very hot during the territory days. And, and I always regret not being around for that. But right now, from 10 years ago, wrestling is moving so much higher, and everywhere around the world. And WWE is becoming more global. We talked about the greatest Royal Rumble. That would have never happened 10 years ago. But right now, they're going to every country, every place, and trying to promote WWE. And at the end of the day, it comes out to business. And I think it's going to a great place, and I think more opportunities are opening up for everybody.
Outstanding. Best of luck to King Khash on Friday, July 20th, For Defy Wrestling's Aries Swerve 2, on behalf of King Khash, this is Mark Madison for the Pro Wrestling Post podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Pro Wrestling Post podcast with Mark Madison, and we appreciate King Khash for his time. Once again, please visit ProWrestlingPost.com for interviews, blogs, and upcoming events in your area. You can also find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Anchor, or whatever podcast app you prefer. Stay tuned for the next episode of Pro Wrestling Post podcast with Mark Madison. As his guest will be Brody King. Thanks.